Parents who force their teens to pay rent should have to follow the same rules as regular landlords.
I have heard so many complaints from teens who are forced to pay rent about their parents still entering their room without permission, looking through their stuff, taking their stuff, and limiting use of utilities even though their parents charge them for them anyway. It really isn't fair. If you're making your kids pay rent, treat their room and property like a real landlord would, and anyone who doesn't should face legal penalties. I also believe that once kids are being charged rent, they should be free to make their own decisions, e.g., going out whenever they want or inviting friends over. And if any of you are getting ready to comment about how they should move out if they don't like the rules, this isn't an option for everyone, especially kids aged 14 to 16 who are being charged rent but aren't old enough to live anywhere else. Curious how different cultures handle this situation. I'm Eastern European and something like this is unheard of. We didn't have money growing up, but it was never a thought they would charge me. Helping out, yeah. My parents never wanted us to start life behind. I understand the aspect of teaching kids money management, but they taught me in various other ways rather than nickel and dime me. My friends were all in the same boat, and now 20 to 25 years later we are the ones that are much more established and have a solid footing financially. I see my American friends still paying debts into their 40s because they could never get over that hump. Help out your kids as much as you can and set them up for success. I never understood why that concept was looked down upon. As an American, I believe this to be a narcissistic trait in parents here. In my experience, it is another way to control your child. At 15, I was paying $300 a month in rent and had to pay for all my schooling. Parents weren't really struggling, but would add on $$ to use items. Like if I borrowed the car, I was expected to fill it. Not what I used, fill it. On top of a use charge. People seem to have this thought that parents are there to protect, teach, and set you up for the future. Narcissistic parents, emo, can't see past themselves. So when I was 17, my GF at the time moved in. We paid my mom $400 a month, more than fair. We still paid for our own food, etc. She would always go in my room still and look around, and she would claim she didn't. So I bought a camera. Boy, was she upset I did that. I moved out 2 weeks later. My mom never returned any rent when we moved out. I was 17, my GF was 18. I wanted to give her a chance and save myself some money, but she couldn't act accordingly even though it was her house. I know if my kid paid, I'd leave them alone. Yeah, maybe. Also, a 15-year-old kid shouldn't be giving their first earnings to their immature parents. I grew up paying rent at 15. It didn't teach me anything about money because that wasn't my parents' goal. Their goal was to have to spend less feeding me and my siblings or use it on their dinner dates or God knows what else. If you're going to take your kids' money, at least teach them something. Or put everything they ever give you in a savings account or stocks. In general, it's just wrong. I guess it's all about perspective. I don't know your family economics, but if you came from a disadvantaged family or single-parent family struggling to provide, you can just view it as contributing to your own family. Not every family is a middle-class suburban family who can afford to give their kids an allowance or be able to match the savings contribution of their kids to teach financial lessons. Some families are just trying to get by and out food on the table or keep the lights or heat on. Couple thoughts. Charging rent to a kid under 18 is wrong. If the family is having hard financial times, it is appropriate to ask any able-bodied individual to help support the family's basic needs. It is appropriate to ask the teen, 15 to 17, working age, to pay for any extras out of their own pocket. This could include cell phone, car insurance, gas, clothing, etc., usually done if the family is struggling with money. All of this also assumes the parents aren't wasteful. If dad is spending $100 per week on smokes and beer, then I call bullshit. I started paying rent at 18. When I started getting benefits from the gov, my folks told me it was to teach me and give me practice in all that rent, bill paying routine. One problem though, I've never actually paid them by myself. My mom has access to my bank account, and can just take my rent out herself the day I get paid before I even wake up in the morning. I'm 20 years old now, and still have no financial literacy, because I've never had to do adult stuff with my money before. I'm planning to get my mom out of my bank account sometime this next year. So my money can actually be my money, and I can learn how to do these things myself, like the grown-ass man I am. Moral of the story: if ya gonna make ya kid pay rent, tell them the amount they gotta hand over, then let them count it out, and let them hand it over. Too many of my friends are also in my boat of not knowing how to handle money cause their parents do it for them, leaving them with no opportunity to learn how to do this by themselves. You ever wonder why Asian kids and immigrants who fall around the middle class mark usually do better than the American middle class? It's because they operate as a family and don't expect kids to do stupid ass shit like pay rent to live. You're a family, and you birthed the child. It's your responsibility to make sure your kid not only survives but succeeds in life. And your kid's responsibility is to pay it forward with his own kids and make sure that they succeed, and so on and so forth. It's called generational wealth, and the Asian community seem to have figured it out, and when you look at income levels they reflect that. There is a reason why Asians in America are some of the wealthiest demographic. I'm not Asian but an immigrant as well. My parents treated me like an adult and taught me the value of money and saving, rather doing it for me. They helped me financially, and because of that I was able to go to a good school, get good grades, and get a good job. They did everything they could to set me up for a good future, and I will do everything I can to take care of them when they are old. People that charge their children rent act surprised when they get thrown in a retirement home. In my program, of several hundred people, I can only think of one person off the top of my head who wasn't a first or second generation immigrant. I live in Canada and never even heard of kids under 18 paying rent. If the child has graduated and is working and the family needs help paying the bills, I think it's fine. Most parents here wouldn't ask for full rent though, just some contribution. When my mom was a teen, she had to get an after-school job to help her family out since her dad didn't make much money. But it wasn't considered rent, just helping the family out. I think if the parents are low income, it's fine to ask their teen to work part-time to help out. As for treating them like tenants, well, here anyway, if you share a bathroom and kitchen with your landlord you are not covered under the Tenancy Act. I also suspect you are not doing everything a tenant would do, paying full market value for the room, cooking for yourself, doing your own cleaning and laundry. So you can't expect to be treated like a tenant. I assume this is an American problem. I am from Europe and have never heard of this. Here, parents have to care for their children until 26 if they're studying or until they get a job. It seems crazy to me that I should, as an 18-year-old, pay rent, when I am not even out of high school. And even when at uni, parents usually pay their children's rent. My cousin, for example, lived with her parents until 27 and didn't have to pay her rent like this either. That is maybe why we don't have crazy student loans and why we enter adult life financially stable. Wild idea: stop charging the beings you chose to create rent. Because in reality, if your kid is under 18, it's not rent. It's a fucking charge to live where you are legally obligated to have them. Stop being shitty parents. Let your fucking kids be kids. Teach them how to handle money in other ways. As an Asian, I am shocked and disgusted about this. I knew this happened somewhat, but didn't know it was so prevalent. I am also glad I don't understand how some humans can behave this way towards their children, and to me this feels like a cheap and selfish way to even teach responsibility. Sorry, but I am glad I was not born or raised in such culture. I'm not Asian, but an immigrant as well, and this is unheard of in my country. I think this type of behavior is also the reason so many people here throw their parents in old age homes. Family is family. My parents did everything they could so I wouldn't be at a financial disadvantage starting out, and I will do everything I can to take care of them when they are older. I also think teaching your children the importance of saving and to value money works much better than just doing the saving for them or forcing them to pay rent. I agree with this if the kid is 18 plus. Anything below 18 and it is child abuse, plain and simple. That being said, I think when it comes to bringing friends over, still treat it the same as living with family and not roommates. At least to keep the peace. That being said, if the adult child wants to get treated like a tenant, then the parents have to stop supporting them with everything. Making dinner, ironing, washing clothes, making their bed, etc. The minute this stuff gets brought in, then it's not really a fair arrangement. We considered making our 17M pay rent at one point. Because he wouldn't do chores, wouldn't leave his room to socialize, would sneak out and into the house at all hours, and was generally being very disrespectful. Luckily we all survived it, he didn't pay rent, and is now on his own at college. Other than going out too much during this time, he's a great kid, and I'm very proud him. Wouldn't leave his room to socialize. This is an honest question. Why does that bother you? I've lived in so many places when I was a teen where the adults would get upset I didn't want to socialize with them. It's very awkward as a teen to talk to an adult, you can't be yourself and the adult probably won't get your stupid jokes. There's also just being an introvert. I'm 30, my mom stays with me and she gets so fucking angry that I don't need to talk to people every day. I'm fine staying in my room, and anytime I leave my room if she's not working, she makes it a point to come out and start talking about nothing. Forgot to add that a lot of adults are also shallow and mean. I was a fat kid and my nose is big. If you think adults didn't bring up my weight or make fun of me, you're mistaken. My uncle would actually tug on my nose and call it a house. Unpopular opinion. Parents who force their kids to pay rent should be fucking arrested. You made the choice to have a kid. The law states that for 18 years you have to fund their survival and needs and happiness. If you're that much of a selfish jerkwad that you need your kid to pay rent, then don't have a kid. Edit. I've read about some parents doing something cutesy or safe with the rent, but I honestly think you should just discuss that with your kid beforehand. I am betting in a lot of instances the so-called rent is just the parents being greedy. There's a difference between teaching responsibility and a parent just wanting their kid to pay them. My oldest is 20 and also have an 18-year-old living at home. Never charged them rent and neither are going to college. Both work. I understand it's tough out there. My parents told me growing up that when we're 18 we're out. Watched both of my older brothers turn 18 and get kicked out. Both were having problems with our parents. Both decided to join the military. Pop pulled me aside before I graduated and said I could stay and pay rent until I found something. I decided to go to the Marines instead. College wasn't an option. I want my kids to succeed. I'm not forcing them to go to college, but they need to find their own way. I understand they are kinda trying to find their way, but I told them, within a few years I will be forced to downsize because rent keeps climbing. They are welcome to stay as long as I can afford this place for now. I think if a 16 plus has a full-time job, asking them to contribute something to a house, even if it is $40 a week to teach them money management, is perfectly okay. Such as if a child gets a phone on your plan, once they work full-time, these are the types of thing they should be paying for, but asking full rent is just wrong for a teen. If they are over 18 not in school and working, I feel they should chip in for food and bills, say $80 a week. This to me isn't rent, it just covers some basic expenses. I grew up with a single mum in house and when I turned 18 she lost $150 a fortnight. I was working full-time and she charged me $50 a week, and I also brought bits and pieces like if we needed milk or bread after the initial shop I would buy it. Also paid for my own phone, clothes and any extras I wanted. I still had to follow the basic rules of the house, not that there were many. I have no problems with the arrangement we had and feel it was more than fair. Can't believe I had to scroll this far down to find a reasonable perspective. I wonder if most of the replies are from teens. I too had to pay a minimal amount towards the household when I was 18 to 19 and not in school, college. It was totally fair. I was legally an adult and working full-time. I was just contributing towards food and consumables. Totally okay. When I went back to uni after realizing I did want to go that route, my parents supported me financially. Will do the same with my kids when they get to that age. When I started working a summer job in 1975, at the age of 14, my stepfather started charging me rent. It was 50% of my checks, or $100 a month, whichever was more. Then when winter came around and I got laid off, he kept charging me rent throughout the winter. Once my savings was used up, he started a tab. When summer came and I started working again, I owed him a couple months back rent. I moved out when I turned 16. Fuck you, Phil. Next time I'm near the cemetery, I'll swing by and piss on your grave again. Edit. Because $100 a month doesn't sound like that much now, I found an inflation calculator. That would be just under $530 a month in today's dollars. I usually paid much more than the $100 minimum. I was working my ass off in the woods, and working building log homes for a contractor. I made enough to buy a used pickup truck and to afford to move out on my own in 2 years. This is the way it works in our home. Kids do not pay rent if they are going to school, high school, college, trade school, whatever. If they are not going to school, they must have a job of some sort and they must pay rent. The rent is based on their pay. The rent money they paid will go toward either future education expenses or moving expenses when they decide to get their own place. Their room is their private space and no one goes in their room uninvited. The rest of the house is common space and rules of the common space must be followed, like no smoking in the house. Friends are welcome as long as they follow house rules and festivities don't get too loud. If you are over 21, your boyfriend, girlfriend may stay overnight, but they cannot move in full time. That's a sign it's time to get your own place. If at any time after moving out problems arise, whether financial or personal, there will always be a room available until you are back on your feet again. Yeah, when I just got out of college, my parents decided to charge me the going rate for a one-bedroom apartment. Utilities, food, part of the insurance, $1,200-ish. But I couldn't be out of the house past 9 p.m. Like one time I came home after 9:30 and my mom was there in her pink bathrobe ready to fucking go at me. Our rules. I had a 3 hours commute too. This was when gas was at about $5 a gallon. $360 to $400-ish a month just for gas. All my money seemed to be drawn away before I could save anything. Meanwhile, my mom would yell that I should move out. Finally I snapped and I was like, I totally would if you'd not be price gouging me for staying in my bedroom. Agreed. My parents tried to make me pay rent when I lived at home, and I told them that I'd want an actual lease agreement and to be treated as a tenant if that was going to happen. It didn't. I think making your child pay rent when they're under like 25 and in school is wrong, but if you're doing it to teach them about the real world, you should be living in too. Agreed. But like any tenant, the child has to enforce his rights himself, not just expect the landlord to honor them. I'm a big fan of upping the ante to weed out bullshitters, whether it is the parent or the child raising the stakes. Increased risk forces both parties to be more honest with themselves and each other. Of course, teenagers don't usually do this because they are developmentally incapable of thinking strategically. Also, the vast majority of them are cowards, and their parents know that, so the parents are very likely to win. As every teen inevitably learns, thinking you know everything only gets one so far. But this is a healthful lesson in itself. My parents charged us rent. My mother also taxed our paychecks by taking 1/3 from the moment we had to get jobs. 15. She also kept a ledger and recorded every dime she spent on each of us from the day we turned 15, school clothes, haircuts, sneakers, everything. When we left home, she presented each of us with a bill that also included half the tuition cost from the private school they made us go to. They wonder why 20 plus years later, sister, youngest sib is 38, none of us have a good relationship with them. Yes, our mother expected full compliance with house rules, and she still hounds my youngest brother and sister for money. They have plenty and always have. When I was 16, I came into a large sum of money. It was enough to move away, put a down payment on a flat of my own and support myself whilst I look for a job for at least a year, if not longer. My mum brainwashed me into spending it all as soon as she could, mostly for rent to her, buying the household food, and told me to hide it and claim benefits. She's disabled and lives off of benefits. Only recently have I realized she did it because she didn't want me to move away and wanted to keep me in her house so I could look after her and she could get money from me. She expected me to pay her rent, tidy up, look after my younger sister, you name it. Yet she wouldn't let me claim any carer's allowance and told me how therapy was a waste of time. I used my last £500 to move away and start my own life. Best thing I ever did. She's now got my sister on benefits and keeps guilt-tripping her when she says she wants to move out. Nearly every time we speak, she makes a comment about me moving back in even though I'm married and live miles away for good reasons. What is it about young people that just can't be thankful and realize they are lucky to have parents who can provide them this opportunity? Parents come from a different era. When you're 18, you're out of the house, done. All I read are stories about young people who never once stopped to empathize with the parents, that mom and dad don't own a money tree but are always there for their kids. Do young people ever ask themselves, what can I do today to make mom and dad's life easier? I'm appreciative for the opportunities that I have, etc. I never see that. It's always a complaint about their parents. When the hell is enough for you people? If you charge your children rent to live at home after 18, you're a terrible parent. Period. You chose to have them, and then by the time they get to the age of 18, they're forced to figure it out on their own? No, that's not how it works. You chose to have them, you take care of them until they're able to do so independently. My parents currently don't do this for this exact reason, and I'm going to follow the same with my kids. My mother started charging me rent at 17. I was working and paying what few bills I had: car insurance, gas, food, my own phone line. She's just money hungry anyway. I had to move back in for a bit in my early 30s and had to pay rent then as well, which I get. I was much older. She didn't care that I was always broke. She was charging me 1/3 off my income, which isn't much on disability, even told me once to get Section 8 and continue living there, so that she could get more money. I told her that even with the 8-year waiting list for Section 8, they'd never approve my spot on my sister's floor as a room or apartment. I think it's far better for a kid to get a job and have complete autonomy over their earnings while living at home. Then if they overspend or don't care for their possessions or otherwise make mistakes, they have to deal with the consequences, but it may not be as bad going homeless after job loss than if they were 25. Yeah, you can certainly urge them to save or even invest their earnings and offer them some guidance, but this is the US, where our most sacred value is protecting our individual property and assets. Getting a job throughout high school was good overall, and I'd want my kids to do it too. Gave me a sense of having to be responsible and answer to people that were not my parents, and respect for people who also go to work every day hating it. Also, my dad did the "you don't have rights" or "everything you have is mine" BS. It taught me nothing other than people do have rights even at a young age. Seizing property without giving children choices is abusive. Now having control over my finances has taught me to respect other people's property and not to encroach on other people's financial decisions. My aunt, uncle, whom I lived with, told me it was time to start paying rent 'cause I was an adult now. I was 20, working full-time and going to community college full-time, while paying for it myself, but somehow they thought I needed more bills, responsibility. They were shocked when I told them I was moving out. We didn't think you were gonna move out. We don't want you to leave. Me, no offense, but if I'm paying rent, I want to live by my own rules. I'm 35 and they still bring this up like it was so surprising. As far as I'm concerned, my decision was the only logical one made in the entire process. Whoa, parents actually do that? My parents have never asked me for a penny in my entire life. I lived with them until the age of 18 and they never once invaded my privacy. They wouldn't even enter the room when I had friends over. All I needed to do was do well at school and not demolish the place, which are fair requests. I've been renting a place for a while now and I've never had an issue with spending my money wisely. Cruelty doesn't make for a good lesson. More often than not, it results in an angry adult. Just give your kids pocket money once a week and have them manage it so it lasts until next week. It's a small amount of money and running out of it won't do serious harm. My son chose to move out at 17. The only thing I asked him for was, and his girlfriend lived with us too, his phone bill and a few extra dollars to help with food bill. He's 20 now, his own kid, his girlfriend is his wife, and he has his own place he's been paying for since 17. My 18-year-old pays her phone bill, her food, and still lives here and works full-time, taking a gap year before university to save for school. She has her own credit card, her own savings. I've never charged my children rent. If I ever did do that, it would simply be put into an account where I would give them the card to when they move out. Didn't have to do that though. I do see the other side. As an adult, if the child is working, they should be contributing to the communal bills, but as an adult they should also be respected and their privacy is paramount. If you want your child to act like an adult, treat them like you would an adult. I don't know why parents would charge their teens rent. My stepson is 18. He pays for his car insurance. We put him and his dad on it so it would be cheaper. His phone bill, and his dog's expenses, that was the deal before we bought her as his graduation present. I think that's plenty of responsibility for someone who is barely an adult, and we accept that if push comes to shove we would do everything we could to help him until he got back on his feet. My grandparents and parents still want to help me even though I'm almost 30, have our own home, and my and I both work. Why wouldn't I do the same for my kids?
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video. And if you are new, subscribe and click on the bell icon.